Geography Form 2, Module 2, Occupation of Geographic Space, or simply Man and Space Occupation. Mr. Winsungen Timothy, Geography teacher. Our lesson of today is titled Forms of Rural Settlements and Their Factors. As plan of presentation, we have the introduction. We have review of previous lesson, that is settlement patterns. We have lesson objectives. We have presentation. We have the definition of settlement forms, identification of settlement forms and their factors, and finally conclusion, especially an activity that we are going to do. Good morning, dear Form 2 students, and welcome to another edition of our online learning. Today, our lesson is entitled Settlement Forms and Their Factors. When we move around, we see the different ways by which people build their houses. Some houses are built in different manners. Others are built in an open area, while others are enclosed. So today you will be able to look into your own form of habitation and determine the settlement form that you live in. So by the end of this lesson, you are expected to identify the forms of settlement and factors affecting each form. So let us now talk about our last lesson. Remember, in our last lesson we were talking about settlement patterns, and we said there were two main types of patterns, which are the nucleated pattern and the isolated or dispersed pattern. From this, if you can remember, we said this area is a nucleated area. That means the population is concentrated around this area. Meanwhile, in this other picture, we have settlements which are separated or isolated from each other. That is what we saw in last class. So today, we are going to talk about the definition of settlement form. When we talk about settlement form, we are simply looking at the layout or the shape of a settlement on a landscape. That is the arrangement of buildings, the arrangement of roads on the landscape. So that is what we are talking about. So take note, with settlement forms, we are simply looking at the layout or the shape of a settlement. And we can identify different forms of settlement. The first settlement form is a linear form, followed by the double settlement form. We have the loose-knit settlement form, and finally the open spaced form. We have the open space form. So let's continue with the linear settlement form. When we say linear settlement, it simply means settlements develop along a communication line, which could be a route or a river. I say the settlement develops along a communication line, such as a road or a river. If you look at this diagram, you see that this is a road network, which is that, and houses are developing on both sides of the road. In that case, we can talk about a linear settlement. And still beside that settlement, you can see a river. This is a river here, and you see that settlements have also developed along the river, and that is why we talk about a linear pattern or linear form, excuse me. Now let's look at the next. On maps, you realize that it is represented as such. You will see that these symbols actually represent settlement, while this symbol represents a road. And so we said that settlements which develop on both sides of a road are known as linear settlements or linear forms of settlement. Let's talk about a double settlement form. In this kind, a settlement developed in two halves, which is separated by a natural feature. The natural feature here can be a river, or it can be a mountain. As seen on this diagram here, this is a settlement here, and this is another settlement here. So you realize that this settlement has been separated from, they are separated from each other by a river. And still behind this side, you see another settlement which is separated by a hill. So we can simply say that a double settlement form is a settlement that develops into two halves separated by natural features. We continue. Let's now look at the central open space settlement. In this kind of settlement, it develops along, or it develops where the people can have access to an open place, which can be a market, which can be a church, it can be a chief's palace. You can see that this is a central place, maybe it's a market, and people are staying around this market because they can easily have access to this service here, which can be a church, which can be a chief's palace, which can be a market. That's why we talk about the central or central open space settlement. Now, talking about loose knit settlement form, we realize that it is when houses develop in a scattered manner, that houses are scattered all over a large area. We have houses in which are few, but they are in a large area, and this is favored mostly by the availability of land, that is land that is available. As you can see, houses are scattered in different areas, thereby making it to be called a loose knit settlement. Okay, in our conclusion, we can rightly say that settlement pattern, settlement forms refers to the layout or the shape of settlement in an area. And so therefore, you need to take note of the fact that they are not the same with settlement patterns. So the main thing about this lesson is that you are supposed to make a distinction between settlement patterns and settlement form. Take note, in our last class we treated settlement patterns, and today we have treated settlement forms. You are therefore expected to make a clear difference between settlement patterns and settlement forms. And if you can therefore answer this question, I will be very happy. I will know that the lesson was understood. So the first question that you have to do is identify the different settlement forms and the factors that affect each form. We talk about, let's take for example, we talk about a linear form of settlement, and the factor there was a communication line, which was a road or a river. So you will do the rest. We go to the next one. In our assignment now, we have to do this question. Differentiate between settlement forms and settlement patterns. And so therefore, with this, I expect you to be able to answer this question, taking into consideration knowledge from our last class and knowledge from the class that we have done today. Thank you very much. Keep on reading, keep on protecting yourselves against coronavirus. I repeat, whenever you read a notice, indicate in a comment that you have seen. And I'm still expecting the assignments that you were supposed to do. Thank you very much and have a blessed day.